Hello, hi and welcome. I am your host, Emma Gunnar-Wardner, and in my nearly 20-year career as a beauty and health writer, I have interviewed a lot of people. Supermodels, entrepreneurs, authors, celebrities and doctors, and many of these conversations had a real impact on me, and I'd come away feeling inspired, excited, informed, and really empowered. And at the back of my mind, I'd always think, I wish I could just publish the tape so people could really feel that conversation. Well, on this podcast, you get to feel the conversation. I talk with experts, guests, and a few friends who I hope will inspire, inform, and empower you, and maybe also challenge you, whether you're looking for self-help, self-improvement, beauty advice, health insights, business know-how, or just some good old-fashioned life advice and a bit of a laugh. It's all here. Welcome to the show. Welcome to this episode of The Emma Gunn Show, where I am joined by Sam McKnight, superstar hairstylist, but so much more. Trust me when I tell you that there are images indelibly printed in your brain that he has had a hand in, and that hand has been in the hair. Welcome to the show, Sam McKnight. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm good, thank you.
Excellent. Now, I'm going to start with a question not about your career at all. What book are you reading at the moment?
What book am I reading at the moment? I just finished. Did you ever read Shuggie Bain?
No.
No. I'm reading the follow-up to that and I can't remember what it's called. But it's his second novel, the guy who wrote it. And the Shuggie Bain is a brilliant book about a boy growing up in a council estate outside Glasgow, and his mother is severe alcoholic. I mean, it's quite hardcore, but it's really sweet and it's really lovely at the same time. Lovely, and it's kind of, I guess it's 80s or 90s sort of period it's set in. Shows you how engrossed in it I was, I don't remember. So it's kind of got a lot of resonances because I'm from a council estate in Scotland too. My mum's not an alcoholic, but it's there was a lot of things that resonated with me. Just the kind of the language and the whole sort of, feeling of growing up on a council estate in Scotland.
Because I've heard you say that you always have a book on the go. Is that your thing? Do you like the fiction of it?
I like things that are a bit more real. I can't get into really sort of stuff that I don't believe in, like science fiction and stuff like that. I can't get into that. I like a biography as well. I've always got two on the go, and someone sent me the Barbara Amiel autobiography, so I'm kind of dipping in and out of that. So yeah, I like to read about people too.
I was going to ask you about this actually, because I was going to ask if you liked autobiographies, because I personally love them, and I love listening to them.
Yeah.
And the reason is because I very much enjoy seeing the world through other people's eyes. And so I was curious if you liked autobiographies, but I'm also really curious about the vantage point you've had in your career, seeing creativity through the eyes of some of the many people that you've worked with, like Patrick de Marchalier and Karl Lagerfeld, and what you learn from those experiences. And if when you are on set with those people, you see the world in a completely different way because of how they're interpreting it.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be like a sponge doing what I do. You have to absorb everything that goes on around you. And you're in a room often with one of those guys, amazing photographer, incredible designer, incredible artist, makeup artist, and you have 5 or 6 really clever, incredibly talented people at the top of their game that you are collaborating with, because everything is a collaboration. It's not a sort of solo art. It's a collaborative process to bring an end result, whatever that may be. It may be a Vogue cover, it may be a fashion show, it may be a campaign, it may be a red carpet, but it's a group of really, really highly skilled people working together to create an image. I mean, that's basically what it is. So it's all about bouncing off each other and learning from each other. And what happens a lot is you kind of find yourself sort of magnetically sort of attracted or unattracted to various different groups of people. So you form little collaborative working groups. And I like to sort of flip between those groups and not get too involved with just one. I like to see what everyone else is doing.
Now, talk to me about collaborating though, because I think when you talk about people with your status in the industry, one of the words that will get used is established. So it feels quite like runs deep into the ground, like you know what Sam is, you know what he stands for, and yet, as you say, you've got to go on these shoots with people who are known for what they do, and somehow it has to meld. And so I wonder about territory and compromise and what that really feels like, what collaboration actually feels like when you're working at that level.
I don't know, it's just natural to me. It's natural to respect someone else's views and someone else's vision, because I'm only the hairdresser on a shoot. You know, usually I'm not the client. Carl at Chanel would be the client. So you're working for that person. So there is a hierarchy. But someone like Carl or Patrick or Nick Knight will always, they book you for a job. They book you because of what you bring to the job. Now that can be what you do, your personality, how you behave, how your rapport, how you get along with them. And most importantly, your record for the best results, you know, because that's what it's all about in the end. So if all that works, then you have a fantastic recipe for optimizing that creativity. And I think, what was your question again?
About the collaboration, about how you are able to be creative whilst also working, I guess, within confines of someone else's ideas.
Well, I mean, if you're working with an amazing makeup artist, someone you really that's really important. The rapport with the makeup and hair, that's vital. If there isn't that, it doesn't really work. Because you have to be able to say, you know what, there's a lot of makeup going on, I'll step back a bit, or the other way around. The makeup artist, maybe she looks great without a lot of makeup, so it needs more hair. It will sometimes be, let's go mad with both and see what happens. But there has to be those conversations continuously. It's not about one conversation, this is how it's going to be, and no one is moving. That doesn't really lend itself to getting the best out of the team, I don't think. In my view, I'm really spontaneous. I don't like to have too much fixed idea about what we're going to do on a job. I like to be really open and think, well, what if we look at it on set and yeah, that's great, but what if we did this? That might be better.
And that, I guess that's the magic, isn't it? It's like not being wedded to a particular idea and then forcing it, trying to make it happen. It's going, do you know what? We need to change. We need to pull back. We need to do something different.
Yeah, I mean, quite often if you're all in sync, you kind of have an idea, yes, this will look great like this, and you can develop it during the day. That really works. But you have to have I think one of the most difficult things for people just starting, I find, is I always tell them, one of the most difficult things is to say, that's enough. Let's just stop there. Or actually even to go, do you know what? I'm not going to do anything to hair at all because it looks amazing. I'll just look after it on set. I'll just move it with my hands. I'll just put it in the right place. Having the nerve to do that is part of the skill.
It's confidence, isn't it?
Yeah, because quite often on a show casting, the girls will come in and try the clothes on. You'll be there and you think, actually, you know what? They don't need a great deal. They just need a little bit of polish or a little bit of this, or the parting needs to change, or it can be quite a minimal thing that can be quite transformational. It doesn't have to be a complete glow up or a complete sort of absolute transformation into something else. It can be really subtle and it can be really effective.
So it is essentially about all the cogs in the machine, even though there's a hierarchy, are the same size, and it's respecting each and every single one of those, and that's how everything works smoothly together.
I think so, yeah. when everyone knows their role and everyone knows the objective.
I've listened to you talk about creativity before, and one of your other passions is your garden. And one word, that you've used describing both of those things is how they're meditative. And I wonder how in tune you feel you are with your intuition and how key that has been to your career and what you have brought to it creatively.
I think as I've got older, I'm much more in tune with it than I was when I was younger, but I think that's probably pretty normal. I don't know, whatever normal is. And but I think, I've slowed down mentally a lot as I've got older. I think about things more than I did. I would just sort of rush into things and on to the next thing, and who knows what city I was going to be in the next day. So you're constantly on that.
Yeah.
And as I've got older, my thought process has been a bit more meditative, but that's, I think, probably because I started doing yoga about 15, 16 years ago. And I think that the breathing and the thinking, or the trying not to think, has kind of affected me.
Okay, so this is very interesting. No one just thinks, oh, I'll try yoga tomorrow. What was the thing that made you start yoga?
I tried to do it a few times. I tried to go to classes and I didn't get it. I don't know, I can't. I'm watching these sort of 85-year-old women bending backwards, and I'm kind of can't even touch my toes, and I'm thinking, oh, this is just ridiculous. I can't do this. And I was in Ibiza one summer, and somebody recommended a lady who came and did one-on-one yoga lessons, and it clicked. She was amazing, and it clicked. So when I went home, I actually found that a lady called Audrey Tom, who I knew as a model in the 80s, was a really good yoga instructor. So I've kind of been working with Audrey ever since, really. But I had an issue with my back, with my sciatic nerve. And the surgeon said, I had some injection. The surgeon said to me, you need to kind of tone down the yoga a bit and do Pilates. So I've ended up doing a kind of mixture of both and a bit of weight training. So it kind of, it's very varied now.
Was the sciatica brought on by years of traveling, carrying kit everywhere?
Probably,
They're not easy things to carry around the world, which you were doing.
Probably, I would imagine, yeah.
So do you think that it was appropriate? Do you think that there was always going to be this point where there was not a slowdown, but maybe a change of pace?
I don't know. No, I don't think it was that. I think it's just getting older. You get to your late 40s, 50s, and I definitely changed. And I suddenly found myself, because I lived in Maida Vale, so I would go to Regent's Park and rent a deck chair and read a book in the evening. And I started thinking, oh, I wonder if I could have a garden of my own. And I never had that thought before. Mm-hmm. So is that just getting older? I don't know. So your mind changes. That's a good thing.
Yeah. But what interests me about that is, I think I've said this before about my career in magazines, slightly different from yours, in that it's like a juggernaut and you just have to hold on, because the second you get that job, it's just moving at such a pace that you have to just be constantly reactive. And it can whiz by in a flash. And it would be a real shame, I think, for it just to whiz by in a flash and to not to stop and smell the roses, for an expression that I chose just for you. So was it also a time where there was maybe God, I've been doing this for a while, I'm really good at it, I've loved it, and just it was appropriate to reflect? And did it allow you to appreciate what would come next?
I guess I was in a flat. I was in a lovely, lovely top floor flat, and I got the most amazing sunsets in there. It was fantastic. But that was the first time I'd read a book. It was nice long summer evenings. I'll go up to the park and I'll sit in the rose garden, and nothing, just sort of reading. I don't know where I'm going with this now. Just be reading, and I suddenly thought I wouldn't mind having this of my own, having a little garden of my own. imagining this sort of, little house with a little garden.
Yeah.
And that's when I started to look. So I don't know what I'm saying.
I think I'm curious about this sort of shift in mindset simply because, and we were talking about this before we started recording, I think for a lot of people, the lockdowns were almost like a forced reassessment, if you like, because you had the time to think. So I find it interesting that while you were still working all the time, traveling the world, the hundreds of Vogue covers, etc., it sort of happened organically for you, that there was a moment of reflection.
I think probably I value my own company. I'm really good on my own, and I need my own space, and I'm around people a lot of people, a lot of egos, a lot of noise, and I like some quiet time for myself. And I think probably that was me, somehow something in me was kind of pushing me to do that, because I needed it.
Yeah.
And I think also getting older, you change. I mean, you constantly, not just getting older, you change, you constantly change. Well, I am. I mean, when I say you, I mean me. I constantly change. My whole working environment changes from day to day. And you go through periods of working with certain groups of people, then that kind of organically changes into suddenly for the next 10 years you're working in France most of the time, and then for 8 years you're in America most of the time, in and out. So, and the people you're working with changes. So I think that constant change is also what's kept me really interested, because if it was the same all the time, I probably wouldn't have lasted this long. But that constant change, the constant change of people is really stimulating.
Really well. You've said, actually, one of the things I noted down about something you said about your career is, I've had a career working with nice people. I don't thrive on drama or tension or fear.
I don't. No. I don't find that challenging. I find it really boring. I think when there's there's a climate of fear and people kind of, how can I say this? I just work well when everyone gets along, when everyone kind of respects each other. And a lot of the people I work with have been with me for over 20 years, 15 years. I find that really good. I work well in those circumstances. It's nice when you know how each other works.
But it also means that you, and again, another quote from you is, I think you were working with quite a celebrated team, but perhaps the energy wasn't quite right. Perhaps there wasn't enough of the niceness around that you're drawn to. And you said, I'm just going to say no next time.
Yeah, I think also being in my position, I'm really lucky that I can say, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to put myself in that situation. But I've done that for a long time. Because I've worked really hard, and I know that you don't get the best out of me in those sort of negative, dramatic situations. I haven't had much experience of that, but it does exist. And maybe other people work well under those circumstances, but I don't. I mean, life's too short. It's about having fun too, really, isn't it? Really, if it's not fun, I mean, I know everything can't be fun in games and hula hoops, but I think I don't take things too seriously.
Let's shift gears a little bit. I want you to tell me, if you can, about what it was like watching Punk emerge from the top deck of the number 22 bus.
Well, when I first moved to London in 75, I mean, it was pretty bleak. It was pretty, grey. All the buildings are still covered in black soot. Because it was only then that they had started cleaning the buildings. Everything was really
post-war.
black. Yeah, and there were still bomb sites, that were car parts, but it was because a building had been destroyed by a bomb, or a few buildings. So there was still all that, and there was the 3-day week. There was all that stuff just before then. So when I came to London, it was not Of course, there were the wealthy parts, but it was a pretty sort of downtrodden city. It was what was that, 30 years after the war, 20 years after the war, 30 years after the war. I mean, it was coming through hard times. And so there was sort of this reactionary movement in the King's Road, which kind of quickly turned into punk rockers. And my route to work was from Putney to Piccadilly Circus, because I worked in the salon of Miss Selfridge in Regent Street.
Wow.
That doesn't exist anymore, which I loved. And so I got because I was at the first bus stop on the route, so I'd get the front seat, and I got the full view of punk emerging up the King's Road from the top floor of a double-decker bus on my way to and from work, and that was amazing. That was pretty incredible, because it went right past Vivian's shop.
So I'm trying to draw a picture in my head of what that could look like. And was it small changes all the time? Because you're not the first person who's been on this podcast, creative, who has said there was something magical. There were ley lines on that King's Road. There was something really magical about it.
Oh, it was amazing, because in 75, when I got there, it was kind of still, it was Bieber, hippies, men in bowler hats, lots of men with briefcases and bowler hats, because that's how they dressed in the city. I mean, it was a real sort of change of times. I know you hear people saying the 60s was black and white and the 70s was in color. And there is an element of truth in that, because suddenly people had color TVs, so people dressed differently. Suddenly there was colorful stuff in the shops. And this little shop called, I think, what was it called? Too Young to Live, Too Something to Die, Too Soon to Die. What was it? What's the name of it? Anyway, because just along the road from there, before then, there was a hippie shop called Granny Takes a Trip at the other end of the block, which was really famous.
People need to start naming shops better.
Yeah,
These
and
are
then
great shop names.
Bieber was in Ken High Street. That was still going. And then Vivian opened her shop. And then the punk thing emerged quite quickly. But you could see the whole thing changing from the hippie sort of 60s to the sort of, well, the 70s, there wasn't just one tribe, there were so many. I think the 70s was, I always say the 70s was the first time that vintage fashion became sort of the norm, because you'd have people dressing like, you know, the Great Gatsby, the whole 20s, 30s thing. Then there was a 40s, 50s thing. There was an Americana thing. There was disco. There was sort of boob tubes and spandex trousers, and that's just for the men. and there was punk, and it was all happening at the same time. And it was incredible. And this all happened in the King's Road. The King's Road was the kind of the epicenter of the whole thing. If you watch old footage of 60s Dolly Birds in the King's Road, it's quite extraordinary, that late 60s thing, because there's suddenly this sort of intense colours in the King's Road, but veering off that was still grey, you know. It was an amazing time. It was a kind of emergence, I think. It was like a sort of butterfly emerging from the post-war depression.
I can imagine it would be on the bus that as you would come round the corner and suddenly see it, it would feel like you'd go through a bubble into something completely different.
You see, going up the King's Road, there was all the amazing antique shops in the new King's Road, and then they had these incredible antique clothing shops that sold sort of Victoriana that were amazing. And then as you went up, it was a gradual sort of journey up the King's Road to Sloane Square.
It's just so beautiful.
Now, it was amazing.
I'm curious about how it feels today, because it feels as though there are those sort of microcultures popping up all over the place. And there could be this whole movement on the street next to you, and you wouldn't necessarily know because it maybe happens online. So having seen something so big emerge, do you see it now? Do you see all these little influences popping up all over the place? Are you able to keep track of any of that or be plugged
I mean,
in?
I don't know. If I was 20, I'd probably have a different answer for you. But everything's much more globalized now. And I don't think it's quite so, they're not quite so many of them and not quite so different.
Yeah.
I don't see that from my point of view, but my point of view is from someone in their late 60s who's kind of, you know, been around a long time. So if you ask someone who's 20, you may get a very different answer. You may see that on TikTok or Instagram or something.
Quite.
But from what I see on TikTok and Instagram, not that I look at TikTok very much, I see the globalization of things.
If you were to look at your career, so we've talked about literally seeing punk evolve and sort of become Technicolor on the King's Road. If you were to look back over your career, can you look back and distinctly remember trends coming and really peaking and things fading away? Has it felt like that kind of ebb and flow of cultures, of movements, of looks?
Yeah, I mean, it has. I was around late 70s, that's when I started, and that was very much the disco punk, sort of that Americana era when New York fashion became really popular. And I worked in Brown and South Moulton Street in the late 70s, which then became another sort of offshoot of the King's Road, but it was much more about high fashion and Browns. And so we had that sort of late 70s period, and then the 80s became this more, fashion became available in a much wider way then, because in the late 70s you'd get sent out from the salon to do a fashion show. There'd be 8 models and you'd have 1 assistant, and the only press that were there, there'd be 50 people there, maybe 100, and they wouldn't be allowed to photograph anything. They'd be sketching. That was what, because it was a trade show basically. And in the 80s, that started to change. They started to have bigger audiences at fashion shows, especially in Paris, and the models became more androgynous. And then that turned up at models like Jenny Howarth, and then in the mid-80s, you started to have Naomi and Christy and Linda coming on go-sees as sort of 15, 16-year-olds. But things don't happen overnight. They may to the public, but when you're behind the scenes, you see things evolving. You see these girls coming, and wow, she's amazing, and they start. The magazine, suddenly there were more magazines. There was ID in the Face and Vogue and Bazaar. Before there was probably 2 magazines, and suddenly there were lots of different magazines. So there was much more outlet for fashion. Then there was TV shows. There was the Clothes Show, which was really big and really important. And they would have documentaries. It started to become public fodder, you know, and then by the early 90s it just blew up. You know, it was pretty incredible. It was amazing how that happened, and that was just in the course of 10 years really, you know. So yeah, I have seen it. I've seen things come and things go. People come, people go, people stay. I mean, a lot of the people I worked with in the very beginning I still work with and see to this day. And social media has been amazing for me for that, because like I was saying yesterday, I did a book a few years ago, and I haven't got Yasmin Gowrie, who was a big model in the 90s, in my book, because we couldn't track her down to get permission for her to use the pictures. So she's sadly not in there, because no one could know where she was, no one could find her. And suddenly she's reappeared on Instagram a few months ago, and it's just amazing to see her, because you spend so much time in close contact with people, and you're with these girls and from their teenagers, so you kind of watch them growing up, and suddenly her and Helena Christensen have posted a picture, and Helena said, I haven't seen this girl for 25 years, I'm so happy. And it's really, really lovely. So, and I think if social media wasn't there, I wouldn't have that. And that's kind of why I love social media. I love that keeping in contact with people thing. you're not going to be going out to dinner with them tomorrow night, but you can, you say, oh my God, how are you? You've got 3 kids, amazing, that kind of thing. And it's fantastic for that. I love it.
It allows you to bring people close again. Maybe there have been
for years you'd work with people, I wonder what happened to so-so, I wonder what happened to so-so, because you'd be intensely working with someone with all the Supermodel era, there were probably 15 models that we worked with, every day for 8, 9, 10 years. Yeah. And then suddenly they all go off and have kids, and what happened to them? Now social media comes on, everyone's reappearing, and it's really lovely. And some of those women are still modeling in their 50s and 60s. It's fantastic. It's amazing. It's amazing. That wouldn't have happened in the 80s. I mean, I love the way that anything goes now. I love that all the doors have been smashed down, and all the rules have been broken, and it's fantastic. You have Kirsten McMenemy with long grey hair down to here opening a fashion show. It's amazing.
It would never have happened.
Never.
Has it been throughout your career? Do you think it has been about pushing to get those barriers to break?
Always. I mean, I would say that the rules are there to be broken, I mean, there aren't, it's the same with hair, there are no rules anymore. You do what you want, people can do what they want, but it's taken generations of people to get there, So that didn't happen overnight.
It doesn't happen overnight.
That's a gradual thing. And obviously nothing, there's still rules to be broken, and I applaud the young generation for keeping on breaking them.
I want to ask you about celebrity. And it's because a few years ago, Terry O'Neill, the photographer, had an excellent exhibition called Celebrity. I don't know if you went. But it was about how there was a real sea change in how celebrity was, because it went from being mysterious. If you think about Marilyn Monroe, we still know very little, although there is a film coming out soon, so we may know more. And then there was this real change where the super famous, there wasn't any mystery anymore. We knew quite a lot. And I wonder what your perception is of celebrity and how it's evolved, considering as well that when you started, fashion was very much inhabited by fashion people and models. And now fashion it's merged a lot with film, with music, and celebrities these days have to be models. And I guess embrace being models as well, because they are on the cover of magazines. And that was unheard of, I guess, at the start of your career.
Oh, it was absolutely unheard of. I mean, it was rare that there'd be a celebrity on the cover of a magazine, and usually for many years, if it was a celebrity, it would be the celebrity as the celebrity. It would be them, Hello magazine style in their home or something. It would be them showing the persona that they wanted to show, to the public. Completely understand that. And even in what we do, even backstage, I mean, there are no secrets anymore. It's all out there. Because even 15 years ago, you wouldn't have known who did the hair at a Chanel show. The public wouldn't have known. Now you kind of have to do a performance and a song and dance about it, because there's a hunger for all that information. A little bit of me misses this sort of the mystery of it, the mystique of it, but that's gone. The genie's out the bottle. It's not coming back, so we better make the most of it. It's fine. And we do, and it's still good fun. But I think the interesting thing is that what you just said is, I've been saying that for years, models, celebrities now have to be models. It doesn't work them just being this one thing. They need to be models, but actresses can act like a model, so it's fine, it's okay. But I think that's been a big change over the last decade or so, where the actress will have to, or the celebrity will have to adopt a different character, because it has to draw attention to people buying that publication or that brand. They don't want to see them. I mean, people's attention span is so short now, mine included. So people just want new all the time. I don't know where that's going to go. I have a few celebrity clients who are very, very clever at balancing that, because I think it's hard sometimes when you sell your soul to the devil and there's no kind of going back from that. I think what's interesting is the ones that do keep a bit of mystique. I think that's invaluable, really, you know?
Actually, one of my questions here is, from your vantage point, if you heard young kids, young teenagers saying they wanted to be famous when they grew up, what would you say? Would you grab them by the shoulders and say, go for it? Or would you say, think again?
You can't really tell teenagers 20, so you can't say don't do that. But what I would say is, okay, be famous for doing something. Don't just want to be famous for just being famous, because that's really empty.
Yeah.
That's not going to be as fulfilling as you imagine it to be. Or is it? I don't know. I don't know. I wouldn't have thought so, but maybe it is, you know? So everyone has to make their own decisions and go on their own journey.
I always imagine it must be like the sword of Damocles constantly hanging over your head if there's no reason for you to have had the fame.
For me, yes. But I wonder if the young generation don't feel like that. You know, it just is a thing, and that's how it is, and there's a need to be famous, and that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah. With mystery, which you just mentioned, to having that mystique and the genie's out of the bottle, but with that mystery comes curiosity, and you have the kind of job and move in the kind of circles that people are very curious about. And in actual fact, I was listening to you talk about the 80s in New York, and all I want to do is just download your memories into my own brain, because for me, I'm so curious about what that was like, because I can imagine RuPaul, I can imagine what it looked like. I just want to know what it was like to be there.
I think RuPaul was 90s.
Oh, really?
80s was, I mean, New York was a very different city. New York it was really rough.
It was dingy, wasn't it?
I remember the first time I went there was 81 or 82, and people were still wearing platform shoes and flare trousers. Now, no one had worn that in the UK since the mid-70s. You know, everything felt orange. It felt you were in, I don't know, was it Hill Street Blues? Whatever. That's probably San Francisco. I don't know. In a sort of, you know, orange tinted cop show. That's what it felt like.
Right.
And because the city was bankrupt, wasn't it? And there was this sort of really visible, palpable separation between downtown and uptown, because downtown was really dingy, uptown was really shishy. I actually did the hair for the Uptown Girl video on Krista Brinkley. That was my first video I did. That was early 80s. Yeah. No, it's Uptown. So there's a reason she was an Uptown Girl, because she was, you know, she was an Ungaro couture, and I think he was downtown. So yeah, there was a real divide, and the 80s saw that kind of all the people from uptown wanting to go to those dingy clubs downtown, and the emergence of the club scene, Madonna, all that kind of stuff it happened so fast. And by the end of the 80s, it was a vastly different city. And I was there for the whole thing, and I absolutely loved it. It was amazing, and I survived to tell the tale.
Well,
But I'm not telling any tales.
No, and do you know what? I'm going to come back to something which actually I think is really lovely, because I want to download your memories about what it was like in the 80s. I'd love to hear the stories. I would love to get a sense of how it smelt, the noise. I bet the city reverberated. I bet those clubs felt a certain way. But you actually have said that a lot of these memories, particularly when they're attached to people of note who a lot of people might feel curious about, you said it doesn't feel right sharing it. It feels like it belongs to a few people.
Yeah. A friend of mine did a book recently and asked me to participate in it, which I did a bit, but I said, I'm not going to tell you these stories because they don't belong anywhere apart from whoever was there. You know, they were private, and there weren't phones, there weren't cameras, it was really private, you know. And that's why if you do see photos, like Patrick McMullen, the photographer, has loads of club photos in his, I think his book was called So 80s. It's a really great book about the New York sort of downtown club scene. I've been watching the Warhol Diaries on Netflix, which has got a lot of great footage in it. But there's not as much. People didn't take pictures like they do now. People certainly didn't make videos when they were out. So it's quite. It has a special place to me. And you know, when you're hanging out with people, a lot of those stories don't mean anything if you weren't there, or they mean something else if you're telling those people who weren't there. Because I used to find myself, you'd sort of start telling a story and you kind of realize, oh, they don't really understand because they weren't there. So you had to be there. So I'll just kind of stop it. And yeah, so it's yeah, I think there's something sacred about those times, and I think we all feel the same way.
Yeah, you know, a few years ago, if I'd sat in front of you as an interviewer and had that answer, I probably would have been like, for goodness sake. But actually, I was listening to an interview with Penn from Penn Jillette, and he was talking about why he doesn't tour with clairvoyants or psychics, because he says that when you basically can bastardize someone's memories of someone who has since passed, because you change them in a certain way, you add new meaning to a memory, and therefore you're taking away the only thing that was left. And actually, whether people have gone or whether it's just a moment in time, sharing it sometimes can just bolt onto it in a way that distorts it from what it was originally. And so I really appreciate that, because it keeps it pure.
Yeah,
and it
absolutely.
Keeps it...
Those stories and memories don't really belong anywhere else.
But they were great.
I mean, there was a few of us shared a house in the city for about 3 or 4 years. Sort of models and hair and makeup people traveling in and out of the city from Europe. And there was a few videos and Super 8 films, and we'll sometimes get them out and have a little night and watch them. And I mean, it's quite depressing because everyone looks so young. You think, oh my God. But, but it only means something if you were there. It doesn't mean anything if you weren't there.
No, which is why it's so precious and so pure. If someone's listening to this and they are feeling inspired by your story, or they've looked at your career and they've thought, wow, I'd love to do something like that, I'm curious about any advice that you might share with them. And I think one of the things I wanted to pull out and ask you about is something you said that you did early on in your career, which is make yourself available and say yes to every opportunity until you get a sense of what you want to do.
Yeah, that's true. It's make yourself available. If you're trying to get into this business in what I do, if someone wants to book you, don't say you're going to your cousin's wedding. You know, just do the job. If you'd rather go to your cousin's wedding, then this is probably not the right job for you. You know, if you're, because you kind of have to give up a lot. I mean, you have to give up an awful lot. But the other side of that is it's amazing, you know, but you have to be prepared to really throw yourself in, really give it up. And you're probably not going to be home at 8 o'clock at night. You might not be home till midnight. You may not get home till 5 in the morning, but
that's just from the club in New York.
You better, yeah. Well, the clubs in New York, you might go straight to work from the club at 5 in the morning. Yeah, there's a lot of that going on. And my God, it was good fun. But no, you just have to give yourself into it. And then you may find yourself with a group of like-minded people. So you're all doing the same thing. So it's easier in a way. You know, you can moan to each other. Jesus Christ, we're not going to be finished till 3 in the morning. Okay, you know, it's fine. It's all right. But be prepared to miss a lot of cousins' weddings and birthdays and all that kind of stuff.
I certainly don't want to diminish what you've achieved over your career, but when I was going back through it, I thought there were quite a lot of happy accidents in here, and happy accidents that were like ladders on the Snakes and Ladders board, if you like. For example, is it correct that your first Vogue shoot you were able to do because Kerry couldn't do it, was unwell or something?
Yeah, we worked in the same salon, and Kerry Warren was the brilliant hairdresser who was doing most of the Vogue covers. And I was sent out to do a Vogue shoot because Kerry either was ill or he's double booked or something. So I got to do it. And I worked with the wonderful Anna Harvey, who I then went on to work with for many years. But that was an accident. I mean, that's because you make yourself available, you know? And I think that's what it's timing, isn't it? A lot of it is really hard work. Let's make no bones about that. It's very time consuming. but it's all about the timing as well. It's all about being in the right time at the right place for what you want. And you might not know that at the time, but you might look back and think, oh my God, if I hadn't done that job, I wouldn't have met you and I wouldn't have worked with you for 30 years. You know?
So there we go.
Yeah.
As we draw to the end of our time together, I wanted to ask you about something I've always been really curious about. I came into magazines in the early 2000s. And at that point, I was very aware from all of the conversations I was having with people that there was less money in magazines than there used to be, and how there used to be these amazing 10-day trips and 5 photographs would be taken on the beach and it would take half an hour or something. And it seemed like it was extremely luxurious, and that all of a sudden the purse strings were tightened. And so I'm curious to know where commerce meets creativity. And if you did have that freedom for such a long time, and maybe the budgets were being thrown at you as more magazines were coming out and people realised that this was something that could be invested in, what it's like to still create the same output when maybe it's getting a little harder, maybe there's less money around, or it's just you've got less time, when it just changes in that way.
Oh, you just do it. I mean, it still was being done, you know. It'd just be, the pressure would be a bit more. You wouldn't have those couple of days for the model to get a bit of a tan before, or you wouldn't have that extra day the photographer wouldn't have the extra day to location hunt, or you would, as soon as the job was finished, you'd be on a plane that night to the next location, or you'd have to do 3 magazines, one after the other in those 2 weeks and not just one. So it just got condensed, and it has been condensing and distilling ever since.
But it doesn't mean that it's the death of creativity. It just means it's
definitely not the death of creativity. Absolutely not. There's so much creativity, but there's so many amazing young hair and makeup teams around now. Incredible. I mean, when I started, there was hardly any of us, and now it's become a thing, hasn't it? Because people didn't really know about us for a long time, but now the genie's out the bottle. That because we used to have trouble getting assistants for shows and shoots and things because they couldn't leave the salon for too long, but now it's much more acceptable. If they're working in salons, they can come and help us for a couple of weeks, or the salon see the value in that, and it's much healthier. But I think it's definitely not the death of. I think what's happening now is really exciting for me, because I think this age now is the beginning of new creativities, new outlets, new ways of doing things, and I mean, people say it's the death of print. No, but print is going to survive in a different way. But I think it's really interesting. For instance, the last few seasons of lockdown, people embrace when there haven't been fashion shows so much, and designers like Dries van Noten, who I work with, have just done the most amazing films and photo shoots, which they would never have done before, and he's really loved it. You know, so I think different creative outlets will always emerge. They'll always evolve. Things should always evolve. And I think the fashion business had been, let's face it, doing the same thing for 30 years. And everyone had been saying, oh, maybe, you know, what can we do to change? And change was forced upon us during lockdown. And I think what will emerge from that, what started to emerge from that, has been amazing.
And I can't wait to see what else happens. Now, one thing that is happening is, a few years ago, pre-lockdown, Hair by Sam McKnight, which had only just dawned on me when I was doing my research, is what your credit would have always been in the magazines. Hair by Sam McKnight. So 4 products, I think, was the initial launch. And now it is expanding, now it is growing. So this is a new phase, isn't it, for Sam McKnight? This
is a huge new phase for us, and we're a very small team. We were kind of ready to go with some new products before lockdown, and then lockdown happened, and, you know, various stories. And I thought, okay, I'm going to look at this as an opportunity, not as a disaster. And I'm going to go, I have time on my hands. I've been forced to stand still. So we went further, and we found a new manufacturer, and we kind of developed even more products. We changed the packaging to be much more sustainable. We changed everything to vegan. So we kind of reformulated a lot of stuff. And now we have a full range of hair care, hybrids, and styling products, which we are very proud to be launching right now.
Imminently.
Yeah.
Now, I don't have your skill when it comes to hair, but if I use these products, am I still going to get a decent result, or am I going to screw it up? How have you made it so that the consumer
we've developed products. Basically, it's a distinct edit of my kit of what I need to get optimum results from every hair type quickly and easily, because I don't have much time when I'm on photo shoot. I mean, with less time than we've ever had before. So for me, it was really important that we developed products that were really easy to use and that cut the time down dramatically. Our 4 dry stylers cut 20 minutes to half an hour out of getting volume in hair because we didn't have to wet the hair. So starting from that point, everything we develop is going to be very, very easy to use. We're trying to demystify the sort of idea of doing your own hair, because it shouldn't really be a chore that you're not looking forward to. It should be something that is just part of a routine. And what I'm trying to do too is I'm trying to kind of stop the negativity about hair. We're not going to be the brand that goes, your hair is wrong and this is what you need to fix it. I'm going to give you a range of products that will be useful to you with your type of hair. That you will be able, there'll be something there you'll be able to use to get the results you want. It's not going to be that looking for the problem to fix. It's about the result.
Yeah.
And it's about the speed and ease of getting that result.
I've used the ones that have been sent so far, thank you very much. And they are incredibly easy to use. And you can use a little bit, get a lovely result. You can use a bit more and ramp it up.
We've done light formulations that are buildable and they're brush outable at the same time. So they're pretty much foolproof. You know, it's not that product that you're going to put it in your hair and think, oh God, I've put too much, I can never get it out. We're not going to do that. I'm trying to take the fear away from doing your own hair.
I think that's what you've achieved. Sam McKnight, it has been such a pleasure
Thank you.
to speak to you, to hear so many of your stories.
But not all of them.
But not all of them, and I respect that.
maybe that's another time.
Another time, maybe, yes, a more relaxed location, and I'll sign a non-disclosure. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show. Please let everybody know where they can find you on Instagram. It's at Sam McKnight 1.
Oh, you're asking me?
Yeah.
I've just got a big grin on my face. Yeah, I'm at Sam McKnight 1 and our brand is at Hair by Sam McKnight.
And obviously those links will be in the show notes, but thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.